Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Joris Mertens. And as understood, I'm one of the closing sessions of today. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with Python on a mainframe and CICS and see what we can do. First of all, I would like to give a little bit of introduction why this topic at least caught my interest at the first place. And let me just give you right away the straight answer. I'm not an actual programmer myself, meaning I'm not the in-depth technical guy who you can answer all the bits and bytes to it when it comes to programming. But I'm always very curious and I always like to understand a little bit about the technology. So when I was working in the mainframe environment, I always like to play around with writing some code, see how it works. But the only problem that I had is hadn't have any real knowledge on COBOL, assembler, on PL1. But everybody told me, hey, Joris, you don't need that because you can run Python, you can run Node, you can run all the languages on ZOS itself. And that caught my attention. And I thought, well, okay, let's try it. And if I can do it, then anyone can do it. I believe that today in one of the earlier sessions, you were already introduced to IBM Z Explorer. And I would highly recommend, if you've not done so, to replay or rewatch that session because IBM Z Explorer is the platform that I'm using today. And I'm using it a lot if I'm curious or if I'm interested in a certain topic when it comes to running something on ZOS. A short story, IBM Z Explorer, it's a learning platform where you, via hands-on challenges, can learn how to utilize, how to work, how to interact on a mainframe with the ZOS operating system. But the cool thing is not by doing it via the terminal interface, but just using VS Code. And why would you like to use VS Code? Well, I'm talking a lot to students at universities and colleges, and whenever we're talking about interfaces or IDEs, whenever you're mentioning IDZ or something, perhaps 3270 emulators, people are often, what's that? But most of the people do have VS Code installed on their laptop or on their workstation already. So it's a really easy approach to start. So for me, at least, I like the benefit of using it. I like the ease of access. And the only thing which is needed to be installed on the ZOS part on the mainframe side is Z Open Automation Utilities, or ZOAU. Unpronounceable, but that's a tool which is being used. And that makes it very easy to interact or to consume data on the mainframe. So we're going to take a look in a second on that. So IBM Z Explorer, the learning platform, it's a great way to start. And what I like to do is to understand what's going on in an enterprise environment and, okay, how can I use it? So when you're talking about an enterprise environment, you're talking about large transactions. And whenever you're talking about a mainframe environment, we all know the spiffy numbers of, I don't know how many, 2.5 million transactions per second, or so many transactions per companies per day, etc. And in order to run these transactions, you need to have a smart solution for that in order to get all those transactions actually being processed. And so therefore, on ZOS, there's a middleware called CICS, which we are using, which is a transaction server. You also have another flavor called IMS. Today, we're going to utilize CICS for it. And I'm not really a CICS person. I don't know the bits and bytes of CICS, but what I do know, or the way I see it, is that whenever you have your ZOS operating system and you have a database somewhere on the backend system, and you would like to run interactions, Well, you can do it by yourself, but I'm always keeping in mind, okay, everybody remembers that moment when you go, for example, to IKEA and you have to go into that data warehouse or in that warehouse yourself because you have to find your chair called Bjorn or whatever on aisles number 21, floor number 16, gate number 3, height number B. So it takes you quite a while to get there. While on the other hand, sometimes you can go to the entrance of a warehouse where there is this counter and you can tap on the bell and someone comes over to you and said, hey, what do you need? And I said, hey, I need this and this from your warehouse, please. Or I would like to store this and this into your warehouse. And that person, he is there all day and he knows very easily how to find their way into that warehouse. And for them, it's very easy and very quick and very much more um, reliable to store something in that warehouse. And I like, and I know, sorry for the people who are serious CICS developers. I know I'm very much shortcoming in this explanation, but that's the way I like to see it. For me, CICS is the counter where a database is somewhere behind it, and I need to have access to data, or I need to store data, or I need to update data in that database. I need to update a table. So for me, CICS, that's more or less how we see it. And on the other hand, how is that being, how are you interacting with it? We're going to use an API, a REST API for this. So more details in the upcoming moments when we're actually starting. But let's first take a look at IBM Z Explore. And I would like to share my screen. And this is a live demo. For me, I'm sitting here in the Netherlands, so I hope that the connections will all be good and that everything is working nicely. But this is my VS Code system, and probably everybody will recognize it. And what I have installed is the IBM Z Open Editor. That's the first thing that is being asked to install if you're starting with IBM Z Explore. And IBM Z Open Editor gives you this interface or this option where you can interact with the mainframe. And it works quite easy. You create a new connection profile, and you have to use your IBM or your IBM Z Explorer user ID and password, and you have to type in the IP address and a port number, but it all goes by itself. And I think most of you who are listening here today are already a bit familiar with IBM Z Explorer. So if not, and if you would like to do this demonstration or this codeathon or challenge with me this evening, please make sure that you sign up for IBM Z Explorer, that you have your IBM Z Explorer interface set up like I have, so you have connection. And we're going to utilize the Unix system services, which is basically the terminal session from the Unix part inside COS. So this is my setup. I'm now connected. So first of all, I like to check if I'm connected, and I'm going to the datasets section, and I'm going to check for zxp.public, which is basically a list of available datasets which are publicly available. And here we are. I see a bunch of them, but as said, we're not going to use the datasets today. We're going to utilize the Unix system services, and therefore we need to set a filter. Now, as you can see, my filter is already set, but if you're doing this the first time, you need to have your home directory set. So in my case, my ZID is Z99996. And so you have to set a filter on /Z/Z99996. But of course, instead of that, you have to use your own ZID. You hit enter, and if all goes well, your home directory will show up. As you can see, I already played around a little bit myself on this system. I have some assembler, I have some COBOL, I have some codeathons from the past. Hey, I even did some PL1, I did some Node, and there's probably, I have Java. And I think, if I'm honest, there's even a Minecraft server which I fiddled around with in the past. And by the way, I failed eventually with get it running, but that's absolutely because my lack of knowledge on Java in this case. So our starting point is our home directory. And if we're making our home directory, the first thing we would like to do is create a working folder or directory, which makes it real easy. And you will, by the way, see that I will cheat a little bit. I will use some copy pasting every now and then because, of course, I prepared the code for today already, but I'll try to make it as transparent for you. So we're going to create a directory which we called Tech Exchange, for example. And here it is. We have a folder called Tech Exchange. And by the way, this is why I like VS Code on a mainframe so much, because it's right-click, it's really self-driven, and it's really easy to interact, because I'm actually now connected with that mainframe somewhere in the New York region. Okay, going back, we have a working folder, and for today we're calling it Tech Exchange. And if we open it, obviously it's empty. So the first thing we would like to do is we create a file, and the first file that we're going to create a Python file. So we call it, for example, hello world.py. And it's thinking about it, and it's, if all goes well, indeed, we have a hello world.py file. So if we open up that file, you can see that it's quite empty because it's a newly created file. But what we're going to do, we're first going to see if Python is running. And for that, we're using this Python code, and I will steal it. And I told you I will be transparent in my stealing and robbing for today. But we're going to use the Python code, just a simple print, hello world. This is my first web server. No, we're not that far yet. We're going to create just, this is my first program running on ZOS. And we're going to see if we are able to execute that. So I do Command S. I'm working on a Mac, so for me it's Command. But of course, if you're a Windows user or if you're a Linux user, you're using Control S. And we have our hello world.py file here. Now it's getting interesting, because how are we going to execute our newly created Python program here on the ZOS system? Well, it's very easy. We're going to use, first of all, an SSH connection to log on to the system. And SSH, it's as easy as it can be. It's just the commando SSH. Then you have your user ID. Again, use your own user ID, otherwise you end up, of course, not being able to log on. But if you could, you will end up in someone else's home directory, which we don't want. So you're using your own user ID then the IP address of the Z-Explorer mainframe system, which is 204.90.115.200. We press enter. Now, if you are not that familiar with SSH, the first time you are creating a new connection to a new IP address, you get a message where your public key, so your authentication method, needs to be stored. And you will be asked if you would like to do that by typing yes, or if you don't want to do that with typing no. So the first time you are doing this, you will probably get that question and you have to type yes. For me, I already tried it a few times. So for me, I already got prompted with my password, which is my Z-Explorer password. See if I remember it. I enter it. And by the way, this is probably very stupid to say, but many people don't know this. If you are typing in your password, the cursor will not move. So sometimes you think, hey, I'm typing in and nothing has happened. Well, that's not true. Your password will actually be there. If you press enter, you get, you get a message that welcome to the IBM Z Explore Learning Platform. We're using this and this service level. And very important, this platform is only being used for learning purposes, so please don't use it for commercial purposes. You will probably be kicked out of the system anyway very soon, but it's really the intention is being used for personal use to learn on the system. So if we take a look at the bottom, I am prompted, and it seems like I already landed in my home directory, and I can do an ls, just a basic Unix command. And here we are, we can see all the folders which are on my system, and we can see it with ls. Now remember that I just created that folder tech exchange, so we're going to cd tech exchange. And now we are in, and if we do an ls for list, you can see most probably that I created that hello world.py program, right? Now, in order to run it, how easy can it be? We type in Python 3, because we're using the version 3, the level 3 version. And then we type in the program name, which is hello world.py. We press enter. Ta-da! It's magic. Hello world. This is my first program running on ZOS. So this looks cool, at least for me, because I know my program is working, Python is working, and now we can get serious. So my apologies. What we're going to do is we're going to create a web server, because in my example, what I would like to do, we have that CICS counter for the database, that transaction server with a database behind it. And what I would like to achieve today is create a front-end website, call it a web store, where we can look up the inventory of our web store items, and we can order them, and we can, etc. We can work with them. So in order to do that, there is on the CICS side, there is a database, there's a program installed, which is using Office supplies. So if we are a little bit further into the process, hopefully we will see Office supplies or items in the store of the Office supplies being displayed on the screen. So in order to do that, we first need to make a small web server to run it. And by the way, in real life, no one would run a web server directly on their COS system. We just do it today for the sake of the fun that we can do it. So what we're going to do, we still have our folder tech exchange. We have our program hello world.py. So we're going to create a new file, which we call web server 1.py, for example. Here we have our program web server py, and just like the hello world example, it is empty. And as said, I am as good as I can be, especially in stealing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to steal this piece of code, and I will put it in my, where is it? Web server 1.py. I will explain a little bit what it does. So what we are going to do, we are using Flask, and Flask is a web server which is used by Python, and it's really, really easy. So what the Flask server does, we first have an application name, and we have a definition of the routing, which is just the slash, meaning that if you enter the home page without any subpages, it's the home page, that's where we are entering. And what would we like to see? We would like to just display a text. Hello world, look at my first application on ZOS. Well, that's a nice text. And then the application will run. We will provide a host, which is the IP address of the actual mainframe. And the port number that we're using, we put in a 0. And what it does, it will uses a random available port number in order to make it run. And we do this on purpose because if more people at the same time are using, for example, port 80, which is the default port for HTTP, then only one person at the same time can do this trick. And that's what we don't want, of course. So therefore, we put in port 0. We save the file. And that's really important. Don't forget to save the file. I can tell you that many people had that problem where they didn't save it and they didn't know what went wrong. I think I just made a little mistake by the way in. Yeah, what did I do? Oh, I already see it. This one was missing. So now we're going back to our terminal on the bottom of the screen. And by the way, if you're using VS Code and you don't see this terminal field, you can easily open it by terminal, new terminal, and that will open this view. So again, we do an ls to see if that newly created program is there. Yes, we have the hello world. And now we also have that web server 1.py. So again, we're using the command Python 3, but now we're going to do web server 1.py and we're going to run it. Oh, it's working and it says it's running on HTTP address 204.90.115.200 with port number 41966. And you will see that every time that you run this program, that you run this Flask web server, it will choose a random assigned port number, so it will change. Okay, now it's working. Now let's see what it displays. So it says if you put command click, you click on with the mouse, it will open by itself. So let's try that. Let's open my browser, which is in my case, my Safari browser. And indeed, it sees that we are on this web address and it says, hello world, look at my first application on the COS. Wow, that was easy, wasn't it? What have we done? We have created our first Python web server running on ZOS. So that's step first. That's the first step. Now we cancel or we stop the program by pressing Ctrl+C. Oh. And we are back. We don't want to let it run in the background. So as told, there seems to be a CICS server running somewhere, and that web server, that CICS transaction server is running, and there is a REST API available which provides information to that. And at the end of this session, I will give you the link in ZExplore where you can find it, and in my writing down, you can see some more information about that CICS transaction server. But if I give you my next example code, which I will do like this, you will see a little bit more information. So we have our Tech Exchange folder. We have web server 1 we just created. We have our hello world. And now we are going to create a new file, and we call, for example, web server 2.py. You can use any name you want to use. This is empty, and I stole my previous created code already. But what you can see now in the import, we still have our Flask, but we also have a request and we have a JSON added. So what does this import do? These are libraries which can work with request and with JSON outputs. And if we take a look at the code, you will see that the application is running. You have your app route, and what does it do? It will get list catalog items. So what we want to do, we want to have the items out of the database, which is managed by CICS. And this is the address, and this is a predefined address, and that's why I created it already. This is the REST API address that we are using. But if you just fill in HTTP blah 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 in your browser, you will need a username and password because that REST API needs some sort of authentication. But in this case, we can give it a header with the name authorization and a key, and it will allow us to work with that REST API. It will give us a response, and that response will be a JSON formatted file. Now, what is a JSON formatted file? For those who don't know it, JSON is really a big bag of data. And you can think of it many ways, but the way that I would like to use it, that it's a bag in a bag in a bag. So for example, if I get a JSON response and I open that first bag, it can contain a second bag, which is called items. And it can contain a bag called questions. And it can contain whatever. So if then, for example, if you go to the items and you open that bag, then you will get several items, right? You can get the inventory of your web server in our example. So in order to read the JSON, you need to have the path to that JSON variable, to that item. So you do that by having the first bag dot second bag dot item name, right? So this is, and again, I'm not a true programmer, so people who are more familiar with JSON will immediately let me shut up straight ahead. But for me, in my world, this is how I understood it the first time that we were working with it. So what did we do? We're going to ask a REST API for information, and we get it as response.json. We are displaying it on a web server, which we did as the same before. So we save my new created web server, and let's run it. So we're using web server 2 at this time. And there it is. So we have a URL, and we can click on it, and it will open my browser again. And here we have it. And let me make it full screen. And it looks very scary at the begin. But if we take a closer look, we can see that we see an CA descriptions, men's waterproof rain jacket. And there are an item reference of 10 and in stock 941. And there are 0 on order. Then we have a new CA description, woman waterproof rain jacket, with item reference 20, in stock 929, on order 99. And here again, a new one, CA description, sunglasses, CA item ref. So it has an item ref, which is 30. In stock, we have 948 and an order 0. Now you get the drill. This is a list of items we have available. Meanwhile, I got a question which is quite interesting, and I got it from, okay, now I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. So Biamar Hayens Coronado asks that considering the CICS is a closed or limited interface, is the proposed backend open or modifiable through an interface, or would an additional system be necessary to make modifications? That's a good point. So CICS is indeed a closed environment. I mean, in this situation, it's fun that we are working now with fun items like rain jackets and sunglasses, but of course, a transaction server like CICS in the real world would be used, for example, for bank transaction or airline transactions, and you don't want to have that open. So as you say, you are correct. Normally, a company would create that REST API using special tooling and make it available with authorization, which is more than the authorization that we are using, which is a basic key. So you are absolutely right. This is not the way how a company in the real world will do it if it comes with regards to security. And as you say, in order to make it work, to get that REST API available via an HTTP request, you need special tooling for that in order to make it available. And you can choose what is available for whom, because you can understand that if I work at the bank and I have a REST API to inquiry all the account balances of my clients, you wouldn't be happy if a single person can look at all those inquiries at once. So there are limitations on that. I hope that answers your questions, and if not, put it in the chat and I will be more than happy to answer that. So meanwhile, we are now having this pile of data, and we would like to structure it a little bit. And now we're coming more into the world of Python, I would say, or HTML, because if we want to use this data and we would like to use it a little bit more readable, we need to do some extra work. And I pre-created a new folder for every one of you, so you can see it. What we are using an HTML setup, and we are going to use an index. We're going to render our website to make it more beautiful, at least more readable. So what we need to do in order to make it run, we need to have a folder called statics, and in that statics there is a folder called CSS and images. The thing is that these folders, they do not need to be filled with anything, but they need to exist in order to make it work properly. So what I do now, in my case, I will steal these folders, and here you have it now. I have a static folder with CSS and with images. The other thing that we need to have a template folder, and the template folder, that is where your HTML code is being written when it comes to how your web server looks. So we need to have a template folder with an index.html, which we're going to do. So I'm going to, and by the way, for those who did take a better look, we already have an index detail, but I'm going to leave that for now. So we also need to have the folder with templates and with an index.html. So we're going to copy it, and we're putting it in our Tech Exchange folder. So now we have our static, our templates, and we have our web server. So next step is to create a new version of our web server. So we're going to create a new file, which we call, for example, web server 3.py. This is our third web server. So what we did, we've created those folders and subfolders, and what we also, and now I need this one. What we need to do is in web server 3, in our newly created file, we're using this code. Now let me try to make it a little bit more readable for you all. So what we see now, what have changed in this version of our web server? So we still have our Flask, but we have now a render template. We still have our requests, and we have our JSON. render template means that we can render, we can ask for a specific HTML file to display or output. So what is our code doing? First of all, we are knocking on the door of that CICS REST API, and we are asking for information, and we get that in return. What you see now, and this is quite important, in this line number 14, you can see that we peel off those layers on JSON, because what do we need to have? We need to have the information which is in the category item, which is in the inquiry request, and which in the operation response available. So this data is what we need, and we put it in a response object. And we do some minor stuff to make it neatly and have it count, have it display all that it sees. And that's just an automatic bit. And what you can see here, we return a render template, which we call index HTML. Now let's take a look at that index HTML, which I stole previously, because that's where it's pointing to. It's talking about this index HTML, which we kindly stole. And what you can see, this is the title. In this stolen example, it's for a codathon, but we're going to, for example, we make it Tech Exchange. And what you can see, it creates a table, and it steals some data. And what it also does, it creates, it steals product images. And what we have a GitHub entry where we have product images pre-created to make it a little bit more fun, which is being aligned with the number of the reference of the item which is on stock, and we're going to make it neatly in a table. So this is what that index HTML does. And there are people who can do crazy things with HTML to make it as beautiful as it is. But of course, now it's more for the sake of that it's running, like, again, on a mainframe. We're going to save our web server 3.py, and we're going to see if it runs. Oh, I lost my terminal. Where's my terminal? Just do a new terminal. Log in. Yep. CD. We're in Tech Exchange, and we are going to run Py. We're going to run our web server 3.py. Let's see if it works. Yeah, we don't get an error. You can see it's running again on another port, which is perfect. And if we open it, what do we see? Wow, this is a bit more spiffy, right? We have now our catalog items. We have our men's waterproof rain jacket. We have how many do we have on stock and how many we have as a price. So compared to the output of the previous one, right? It's purely this data which is returned by CICS as a JSON dump, I would say. Here you have it, do with this information what you would like, steal from this information what you would like to steal, and make it as nicely as possible. And that's what that HTML code does. And now we immediately have something better, because now we have those tiny little sweet images which we have available. So we have a small shop running on ZOS. Now, let's make it one step more interesting, and that is that we're going to take not only an index HTML, but I also want to see a little bit of details of a little bit of details what it shows. So we're going here again. I'm stealing the code because otherwise it took a while to write it all. We are here in our Tech Exchange folder. It's getting a little bit messy now, but here in our Tech Exchange folder, we have a web server 3 So let's make a web server 4. Web server 4.py, here it is. And we're going to enter the code, which I just neatly stole. And this is again the same code as we had previously. But if you take a look at this app route, remember at the beginning we said, oh, I took the wrong code. Wait. I take this one. I will explain later why I took the wrong code. So if you take a look at the code, again, here we have the request on the REST API. Here we have the response, which is being provided via that index HTML. If we're going through the website landing page, just / that's it. But what if we go to / detailed info? Now we are taking that item ID, which is the unique ID of an item. We have a URL with, again, another REST API, but we add that ID, and that ID which is being used is the item ID from JSON. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look at for example, the waterproof rain jacket, the item reference is 10, meaning that if we want to take a look at the details of the men's waterproof rain jacket, we have to take a look at item reference 10. So this is that number 10, which we put behind the REST API HTTP request. We again give it the same authorization as we did, and we return the template, not index, but we're going to use index detail.html. And in that index detail HTML, that's going back here to our setup in the templates. Here we also have our index detail HTML, which is similar, kind of similar as index HTML. You know, it just says, how am I going to display it? We're going to make it a nice table. We're going to put an image in it. We're going to put the image a little bit to the left of what we see. So this is the index detail. We're going to save it again. And believe me, there are many times where you don't understand why your web server or why your program isn't running and you forgot to save it after you did a modification, for example. We have still our previous web server running, which was web server 3, and now we're going to web server 4. Here we have it, and we're going to open this. Okay, this is nice. We again see the catalog items, just like we saw before. But if it all goes well and we press on this item, you can now see the details of that men's waterproof rain jacket. And here you can see that we are doing a request for detailed info with item ID 10. And remember when I mentioned in the code that we put that plus ID there, that's what makes it unique. So what do we have created? We have created a very small web server running on Python on the COS environment. And what does it do? Sure, I don't think this is a very nice web shop if you would like to buy or you would like to sell something, but you get the picture, right? It is a very small Python program to run a Python web server. We run it on COS. For the sake of that, it can run on COS. And what it does via that REST API request it knocks on the door of the mainframe CICS transaction manager and says, okay, hey, what do we have? Well, we have sunglasses, we have raincoats, we have whatnot. Okay, that is nice. And knock, knock, yeah, for the raincoats, how many do we have in store and what are the details of the item? Sure, I can give you the details of the item. That is all that it does. And you are all probably thinking, okay, this is nice, but this is so incredibly simple. And I think that most of you are way better in Python than I am. And if you see my code, you will probably would think, oh, why do you write it like this? I'm sorry, but as I start my, when I started my presentation, I'm not an actual programmer, but I'm someone who's curious and I want to know how it works. And what we did now is we could interact with the mainframe environment, and we could work on a mainframe with the CICS manager without having actual knowledge on it. So I was really proud of this, and we did this some with many people before. We showed how to do it. I will stop sharing this screen now, or perhaps, yeah. Thank you very much. So I think it's really interesting to see how easy it can be to compile, to run, to build the code on a mainframe environment without having a deep, thorough knowledge. If you like this, where can you find it? Where can you by yourself or perhaps in a team setting, where can you find this challenge yourself? Well, we have posted it on IBM Z Explorer. And what you can do, you can request access to the codeathon section after you have finished your files, USS, or and VSC1. So you have a setup, and you can request access to this challenge, and you can run it yourself. It might be available later on as well in one of our general streams, but I'm not sure about when that is going to happen. But please know that this is available and it's quite fun. I do have a question. Does the backend a question is, does the backend's web interface include the algorithm or system to update the database readings of the items, whether existing, unavailable, or required, or is this process managed separately, such as through an additional data server? No, there is no, does the backend web interface. So it's not the web interface, but what you're meaning is that whenever an item is unavailable or whenever there's an error, how is that being handled? And that's all handled in that transaction server called CICS. So don't think of it as a web interface backend, because it's just a REST API. It's just an address which we knock on the door to, and we get a bunch of information. So directly with that REST API, you cannot do anything else but requesting certain information or providing that information. Now, there is an interesting thing in your question, because what you're saying is what happens when whether a system is unavailable or when goes something wrong. What happens, or is there a data server managing that? And that's all being handled by CICS. And that's why that transaction server is very interesting to use. So take the example of a bank transaction. If, for example, if I am transferring money via my application on my cell phone, which is using that REST API interface, and if I would like to send 100 euros to my daughter, and I type in 100 euros to my daughter, I press enter, and at that moment, whatever happens, the system stalls, and the 100 euro is from my bank account, but it never arrives on my daughter's bank account because there's, I don't know, and the system stalled or somewhere in the network something went wrong. It's being abandoned. CICS is one of the reasons why CICS is very powerful. It does this double checks that only if the transaction can proceed successfully, if it managed to complete the whole cycle of that transaction, then the circle is round and it will acknowledge on both sides this transaction is valid. So in case something goes wrong, it will abandon the transaction and the transaction will be failed, but there will not be money loss because otherwise you will have your money somewhere floating around in cyberspace, right? You don't want that. I hope this answers your question a little bit. I have another question. Is it possible to use Python to trigger or monitor CICS transactions in real time? Would integration layers like MQ or REST APIs be required? That's interesting. I think if the information is available via REST API, it is possible. Honestly, with the amount of transactions which is being handled by CICS, I don't think that a program like that would be suitable. But honestly, I don't have the examples or the knowledge to confirm or neither deny. But I would say there are better solutions, like you are saying, like MQ or REST, like MQ perhaps would be more suitable. I don't think that for a real life example, you don't want to use it for monitoring purposes. But if there's anyone in the audience who has a better answer, please let me know, because that's more on the operational side, and I don't have the knowledge to say it out loud 100%. Okay. Any other questions? I see that we're almost on time. If not, I would like to thank you all. And I have one last special message for you, which is what to do and where to find your skills. Because there's a lot out there. We talked about Z-Explore, but we talked about many other things today. If you're interested in upgrading or finding skillspot, please find the IBM Skills Depot at ibm.com, and you can do it most easily by, and I will put it in my chat. So without overwhelming you with a lot of websites and URLs from IBM, I like to mention this website, and I hope that the administrator can mirror this in the public chat, ibm.biz/ztalent. This is the landing page where you can find everything when it comes to skills, when it comes to resources and employment, and all the programs that we have available. So if you're interested, you can go there. You will find direct links to IBM Z-Explore and many other ways to get your skills and get skilled up. So for me, here in the Amsterdam area, it's almost midnight. I see that there are no other questions. I would like to thank you all very, very much for your attention today, wherever you are in the world. Some people probably are now just having their first cup of coffee. Some people just had their lunch. It was my privilege to talk to you today. I would like to thank you all for listening. And with that, thank you very much and have a great day.